Well, good afternoon. Today we're in a very short psalm, Psalm 134. It's just three verses, and but there's some really profound things that are said in the psalm. To begin with, he said, "Behold, bless ye the Lord, all ye servants." Then he goes on to say, which by night stand in the house of God, the house of the Lord. Lift up your hands in the sanctuary and bless the Lord. The Lord has made the heaven and the earth. Bless thee out of Zion. Now, generally, this psalm is applied to the congregation. In other words, it's a call for the congregation to bless the Lord, that is to praise him and honor him. But I think it's in the context of speaking specifically of the Levitical priesthood, which would be doing the service in the temple. And if you notice, he talks about they're there all the time. I mean, even in the night. And the reason that would be is because they would be preparing for the next day. They would keep the fire burning on the altar, the oils in the lamp. And so it's probably in context referring to the Levitical priests, again, who were the ones who served in the temple. But this is what we call an ascent or an ascent psalm, and the pilgrims would be coming up to Jerusalem to worship. So we get the congregational idea there. And if you think about it, this is probably when they're departing from Jerusalem. This might be the farewell departure. It's the last of the ascent psalms. And so they had been there. Now they're going back home. And well, I want to bring a point out on that in just a moment. But I want to address this whole business for just a moment about praising the Lord. Now, in the Hebrew letter, you remember in the 13th chapter, he'll say in verse number 15 and 16, by him therefore let us offer up the sacrifice of praise. We don't offer up animal sacrifices anymore, but he talks about the fruit of your lips. Now, when you're blessing the Lord in prayer or in song, you're actually, I want to stress this, you're actually speaking to him. You're praising him. You're honoring him. You're speaking to God. What a wonderful God he is. And so when we bless, that's exactly what we're doing. That's what we do when we bless people. That is, when we speak well of them, we're addressing them. And so I want you to keep that in mind, that when you bless them, you're actually speaking to God either in prayer or song, where you're praising him directly. And so then the writer goes on to say in verse number 16 of Hebrews chapter 13, to do good and to share or communicate, forget not with such sacrifices God is pleased. And so it's important to keep that in mind. Now, what's going on here, secondly, is that you'll see something important, I think, where he says, lift up your hands. And what they would do back in those days is that they would actually lift up their hands. The hands would be outstretched, and they would lift up their eyes towards heaven. Now, I want you to think about something. Of course, Paul tells us to do the very same things over in 1 Timothy chapter 2, where he speaks about men, and that word specifically means men, that they are to do that same kind of thing. And so here's the church, and here is men in the church that are leading the worship and the congregation. You see, they're lifting up their hands in praise to God, and really it's a petition in which they're thinking that they would receive a blessing from God. Now, that's the first idea of blessing I want you to get, and that is that when you're blessing the Lord, you're speaking well of him, and you're speaking directly to him. But what's interesting, I think, here is in the latter verse, as they're leaving Jerusalem, they are blessed. Now, notice this. blessing the Lord, and then the Lord blesses you. Now, the Lord's going to bless you in a whole different way than you're blessing Him, because what God is going to do is favor you or bless you in some way. Now, here's the thought I want you to think about. When the Lord blesses us, He is interacting, He is doing something in our life. The reason I say that is because we use the word blessing so loosely, and we've lost the real profound meaning of blessing. And what we're thinking about here is that God directly, if you want to say it this way, intervenes, or He directly blesses you. There's something going on, you see, from heaven to earth in your life. That is, God is blessing you, and He's bestowing His favor on you. And we ought to be tremendously grateful to God. So in the psalm, I believe it's a farewell departure from Jerusalem. These pilgrims that had come up to worship are leaving. The priests in the sanctuary are praising the Lord, and then as they are departing, there's what we always call, well, at least they call it in some religious circles, the benediction. That is the blessing. And yet I want you to remember that God intervenes in your life to bless you. And so it's a profound psalm, is it not? All right, we'll talk more about the Psalms, and we're already in Psalm 135 tomorrow. See you then.